seat at the table with some men with confidence.
And welcome to Men in Confidence Sharing, where we, the men of a certain age, share our thoughts, ideas, and opinions in confidence. And today we are joined by two of our crew. We have Rhino and we have Terrence, along with myself, the host, Tony. So hello, Rhino.
Good, everybody.
And hello, Terrence.
Greetings and salutations. And yes, we got to include our host, Tony.
Sometimes I forget about me, man. Sometimes I forget I'm here. But that could be due to trauma.
Nice.
Which is our topic
Nice.
for today.
Good segue.
And we're not talking about physical trauma. We're not talking about any arms or legs or limbs being taken off, but we're talking about emotional and mental trauma. When you're damaged on a spiritual level or on a mental level, or I would say on a level
Or
of
level.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, let's talk about trauma. And can you actually recover from trauma? And let me define that for you, because I was thinking along the lines similar to alcoholism. People say that when you become an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic for life. So when you receive trauma, does that trauma travel with you for the rest of your life? Or can you actually heal and recover from trauma? And I'll throw that question out to the fellas.
You can absolutely heal from trauma. It's Terrence was about to go, but I took over. But you can absolutely heal from trauma. I was trying to Google it, but there's a story of a man who, if you met him and knew him, you'd never know that he was horribly abused as a child. But he didn't let that trauma stop him from becoming a good, decent, upstanding individual. And I think about my personal traumas that I've been through. Some of them I really didn't think of as trauma, but the older I got, the more I realized, wow, that was a pretty traumatic experience. Perhaps that's why I respond this way to certain situations. But I'm not gonna let those traumas stop me from being a better person. And if I find that I have, I personally would work towards overcoming that trauma, getting past it so that I can move forward and be a better person.
Okay, so I'm going to try and wax poetic here a little bit. And, trauma is part of the inspirational story that we all are writing. What I mean by that is, in every life, there's some sort of obstacle, some sort of challenge or adversity that you face. And more times than not, that adversity is trauma. What do you do with the trauma is what defines and what makes your story. Do you succumb to the trauma and never do the work to overcome it? Or do you put in the work, put in the effort, dust yourself off, stand up, work through it, and become this beacon of hope and inspiration and light and positivity? And I read it somewhere online, somebody else's survival guide, because they're going to go through that same thing and see, if Terrence did it, then I can do it too. So absolutely believe trauma is something that you can get through. Now, I'm not saying it's easy by any means. I want to make sure I throw that out there too, because it's real easy to be like, oh yeah, trauma, no big deal, get over it. And I think that's what people hear sometimes when you tell them, no, you can get through your traumas, get over it. I'm not saying get over it. What I'm saying is get through it, get help, get what you need to overcome and get past the trauma.
Okay. Appreciate it, fellas. So I feel like my answer changed while thinking about this. I was going to say, yes, you can heal from trauma completely. And I somewhat still agree with that. But I think that there's always going to be the possibility, depending on how much damage you receive, you're always going to be a little bit careful in that area, right? Like, let's say that you came close to drowning when you were young, right? You may get over the fear of drowning, but you're going to be just a little bit more careful around water than the average person, you know, just because there's something in there still. Like, I don't know if you will ever completely be, or let me say it like this. I feel like if you break a cup and you put it back together, no matter how well you glue it back together, there's still cracks, right? The liquid may not leak out, but there's still little cracks, little scars. There's always little evidence that there was damage here at one point in time. It may be fully healed. Like if you cut yourself and you heal up and there's a line there, like it may be fully healed and it may not hurt and it may not be any pain, but there's just a little bit of evidence at one point in time that there was damage there. I don't know if y'all agree with that or not, but I think that's where I kind of landed at that.
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, it's interesting that you got to the word scar, because that's the first thing I thought of when you were talking. You know, I have been more than a klutz on occasion and have a couple of scars. And, you know, those scars are reminders that at one point in time, I went through something and got hurt, but then I'm still here. So that scar lets me know that, hey, I fell and, you know, got my eyebrow nicked up and have this permanent scar in my eyebrow. No, it's not parted to be cool, but it's there. I'm still here. Both my eyes work. I can see just fine. I'm not, you know, too damaged, but just nicked up a little bit. I'm still going. I'm still here. And it can kind of serve as that reminder or inspiration that, hey, even though hard things happen, I'm still here.
I dig it. I like the thought of being able to show your scars, right? Like if you've been through something traumatic, and let's use your eyebrow for instance, right? If it fully healed and looked as if nothing ever happened, you won't be able to really tell the story as well. You see what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely,
the evidence is there that there was once damage and that you recovered from it, and someone could see it and say, oh, why are you like this, or why is this like this? And good, I'm glad you asked me, let me tell you a story. And it could lead towards them, maybe them getting healing for whatever their traumatic event was.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me ask this. Okay, so I just talked about you telling your story, and this is kind of what we were thinking about before we got in front of the mics, as far as recording wise. Does it take another person? Do you need an outside person to heal from your trauma, or can you do it yourself? Does it just take you focus and diligence and the willingness to heal, or do you actually need help?
You can do it by yourself. I agree with that. You can do it by yourself, but in many cases, it's best to have some outside help. Sometimes you need someone else's voice to help you reason through things. Two heads are better than one. It just takes someone else helping to lead you out of that. And I can't help but think about the allegory of Plato's cave, and we discussed this before. That person that's been stuck in the cave all this time, he only perceived things a certain way because of the shadows that he sees. But that person that's been outside of the cave and has seen the world and realizes that I'm not bound to this cave, and there's so much more to this world than I thought. I'm gonna go back into the cave and tell my friends in the cave, hey, there's more out there than this cave. And you, a person that's been in that cave, and that cave is all they knew, all they know, they're gonna need someone to lead them out of that. And if you think about it, just to try to kind of bridge that in trauma, sometimes people who've been through traumatic experiences kind of feel alone, feel like they're by themselves and nobody understands them. And it very well may take someone who's been there to come and explain to them, hey, I've been through that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Let me tell you how you feel. You feel like this, you feel like that, you feel like the other. And if I may be so inclined, as a minister, I heard the story about this man that he was going through something, and God was helping the man, and the man in the minister that was there talking to him, he didn't know that the minister knew exactly what he was going through, and God dealt with the minister's heart, and he wrote it down on a piece of paper, something that he could not have known other than God sharing it with him. He shared it with the man, and the man saw it. And when he saw what the man had written, it dawned on him that this guy knows what I'm talking about. But it took that small miracle to break him out of his trauma, to break him out of his own head, to help lead him out of that trauma. And so yeah, it's absolutely necessary. It's necessary in many cases to have an outside voice, to have someone else there that can relate to and help guide you out of that situation. Otherwise, you're just going to be trapped in your own thoughts. In fact, when we were having this conversation before, we were asking about something else. And yes, I know I'm being vague. I apologize for that. But Terrence asked a question, and he asked the question to himself out loud. And it made me ask the question to myself in my head. Wait a minute, am I doing everything possible to get past my own personal situation that I've been going through over the years? And it opened my mind, and he wasn't even trying to guide me. He wasn't even trying to help me per se with the situation, but by him asking that question, it clicked in my mind, and it helped me to realize, wait a minute, I've been dealing with something and I've been thinking about it all wrong. I hadn't even allowed the possibility to come into my head that I could get out of this thing by simply doing this, by simply using this different avenue that it never came into my mind until he asked the question. So whether directly or indirectly, you kind of need somebody else there to help you through that trauma. And there's nothing wrong with getting help. I appreciate the help.
Well, you're welcome. And I guess so, because I have a knack, I think, for doing that sometimes, saying stuff and being like this profound statement. I'm like, oh, I was just kind of talking out loud and thinking, but if it helps, great. Dumb luck, divine intervention. It was me, but it was something speaking through me to you. So yeah, I try not to take a ton of credit for those moments sometimes.
Hey, I'll take it. It.
But my first thought in this cycle of thoughts about, is outside help needed for getting through trauma? And I immediately went back to the example of someone drowning, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I can't say that I've ever heard of an instance where someone drowning saved themselves. You know, I know for me, as a person who's not the strongest swimmer, if I'm in the midst of a struggle and I'm like I don't know that I'm going to save myself. I'm not going to just give up and just drown, but you know, it might probably require somebody jumping in and pulling me out, because if I'm at that point, I'm at that point and I can't see my way out of it. And as I started thinking about this more, I thought about just, you know, like what just happened with Rhino, giving advice or perspective. It's easy to give perspective to someone else when they're going through something because you're on the outside looking in at the problem. But when you're the one having the problem and you're in the midst of it, it's almost like that's all you can see. And it takes somebody removed from the situation to be able to see things on the outside of the situation that you're not seeing, to help give you a clearer view and a better understanding and a different perspective on how to resolve said problem. So I absolutely believe help is needed, required, necessary.
So there's a character named Jen Rummy on the Boondocks that has one of my favorite sayings. Like, there are known knowns and there are known unknowns, but there are also unknown unknowns, things that you don't know that you don't know. So I believe that you can't help yourself with everything because you might not know that you don't know what your problem is. You may be totally unaware of some of the things that are damaging.
Well,
Good
that's
point.
where a person needs to seek help. Okay, so you don't know that you don't know that you need help. But if you're seeking just to talk to somebody. Sometimes talk to somebody will open up ideas. It'll cause things to click in your head. Like, I don't think was I even in the conversation we were having before, or was I just, I don't know if I was doing something on my phone or just listening, but when Terrence made a statement, it clicked in my head. I didn't think to seek help for that. So, but keeping a open mind and a way of an avenue to talk to people, just talk. Talking actually does help solve a lot of things. It really does.
Well, I also wanted to address the drowning example. Like, let's talk about help in that situation. This may be telling my age, we're men of a certain age. I remember back in the day, you know how the G.I. Joe cartoon used to come on? And like at the end of the cartoon, they used to always try to tell a message.
Yep.
And in one of the cartoons in particular, there was this little kid that was drowning, right? He was in the water and he was drowning. He was yelling for help. And one of the Joes came up, but they didn't grab him and pull him out. They talked him out of it. Cuff your hands and splash your legs this way and blah, 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 blah. And like, oh, I'm treading water now, I'm swimming. So when it comes to help can arrive in multiple ways. Someone doesn't actually have to come in, grab you, and pull you. It may just be words at the right time. It may just be direction. It doesn't necessarily have to be intervention, shall I say. Someone doesn't necessarily have to get in there, get grimy with you, and pull you out.
Okay. I get where you're going with that. That's actually, I was just talking about perspective for me, because I was thinking about this as exactly the opposite of that, in that someone sometimes has to get right in there with you, get like knee to knee with you, shoulder to shoulder, and drag you out of the situation or whatever traumatic experience that you're dealing with. And what I will say is that there's probably a space and a time for that, because sometimes you just need somebody to smack you upside the back of the head and like wake up, snap out of it, come to, and kind of that jolt of being smacked is like, wait, okay, wait a minute, I do need to do something different. And it just kind of shifts your thought pattern just enough to realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was this bad. I'm not advising anybody just go around randomly smacking people, but you know,
that would be bad. But sometimes you can see things, you can see people going through things, and I don't think it's against the rules to pull them aside and talk to them. I'm not saying go out there and blast them, put them on blast. I'm talking, just human to human. Just pull them aside and be like, hey, are you going through something? Are you okay? Is everything all right? Okay. And I've even talked to people before, and they'll be like, oh, I'm fine. And I'd still not push it too hard, but I would just kind of tell them my experience with certain things. Like, I remember this, that, and the other happened to me. And just to kind of put it out there. Just putting my feelers out there just in case. And if they still don't want to talk about it, I'll be like, okay, well, if you want to talk to me, you can. It's cool. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I'll just sit and listen. I'm not trying to push you in any way. Just to kind of leave it, just to kind of take the pressure off, because if they're going through something dramatic, they're already under pressure. They may not be in a place where they're ready to talk. They might be that person sitting in the cave thinking, no, this is how life is. I have to just live with it. But a lot of us got better because somebody came along and let us know, hey, you don't have to live in this cave, and left us with that one little message and walked off. And that, at least they put that seed in our head to where we're thinking, I don't have to be like this, or this doesn't have to be like that. And it gave us that little oomph we need, so that when we were ready to talk, when we were ready to move forward, we already had that little seed there, and that's now a plant, and it's blossomed the fruit of us moving forward and taking a step to do something.
Okay, so I want to jump in because I heard some things and I want to add another wrinkle in. Let's use the example that we've been rolling with as far as drowning, right? There's someone in the water and they're drowning. That person needs help. One of the things you have to take into consideration is that if you are the person on the outside, right, you want to help the person on the inside that is drowning, you have to be careful, because you can go in there, try to help that person that's drowning, and they'll take both of you under. So in order to help someone that's going through something traumatic, in order to help someone out of it, they have to be ready to receive that help. You see what I'm saying? Like, just because they're going through something traumatic doesn't mean that they're ready to come out of it. It doesn't mean that they're ready to be helped or healed. You could go in trying to do the good, right, whatever version of the thing that you believe that you're doing is, and end up getting yourself in more trouble than you warranted for. Like, if you're trying to save someone that's not ready to be saved, you could end up drowning along with them.
Okay. I'm gonna take that and go a step further. I was at Starbucks Thursday, Friday, one day this week, and the sign in the drive-thru said you can't share from an empty cup. Basically, you
like
can't
that.
help somebody if you have nothing to help them with. You know, it is when you go to that place of trying to be of a service and of help to somebody, they have to be ready to receive help and be in a place to be willing to want to work through their trauma. But if you are both dealing with similar issues or something kind of in the same realm, the blind can't lead the blind. You can't really pull them out of something when you got the same kind of thing going on, and it's that doesn't work either. So definitely respect the fact that people sometimes just want to jump in and help right away, but before you do, make sure that you got your ducks in a row and you have something to actually contribute, because not doing that could just make the situation worse and push that person further into the trauma or bad spot that they're already in.
That's true. Unfortunately, because of my profession, I kind of can't not offer help if I see someone, in trouble. But not to go into too much detail. I kind of, it's like being in I think it's Alaska. It's illegal to not pick up a hitchhiker or something like that, because the weather is so very bad. You basically giving them a death sentence to leave them walking. Still scary, but it's kind of within my job description to help people. Let me put it like that. But even then, I can't. There's still limits. I still have to play it a certain way. I still have to. I still have to have something to help them with, just like Tamer said. I still have to have something to help them with. But I also understand that I'm not going to solve their problem. I can only help lead a horse to the water. If the horse walks away from the water, then at the end of the day, that's on the horse. He can drink all he wants if he wants, or if he wants to wander off back, all right, horse, nice seeing you, but at the same time, I think just as a person, as a human being, if you see someone going through something and you know that you have the tools to help them, I would think that it would be mighty kind of you to help if you can. But if you don't want to get involved, by no means don't take this as license to go and involve yourself in people's business. But just for my personal profession, I kind of am supposed to help if I can.
So I have one more question before we go. And it's basically this. Do you need experience in an area in order to help someone? Like, do you need to be married to help someone with a marriage? Do you need to be a man to help someone with male problems? Do you need to be young to help someone with youth problems? You see what I'm saying? Like, do you have to have experience in an area to help someone with trauma? For example, like I will bring it back to alcoholism. Do you have to be a reformed alcoholic to help someone with a drinking problem? Do you have to be a reformed sex addict to help someone with a sex addiction? Those are just examples, but I will toss that question out to y'all. I'm just curious to see what you think.
That's an interesting question, because when you first started, like, do you have to be married to help a married person? And my first thought was yes. But then I thought, well, a divorcee could probably give you some good advice on things to do to keep your marriage together. So
It just still falls in because they still have the marriage experience. You see what I'm saying? Like even
Right.
if they still have the marriage experience. But can you help someone without ever having walked those steps before?
well, looking at our group, I'm still inclined to say yes, because I would feel a little bad to say, I don't know if one of us could really give us any marital advice, even though. So I'm still inclined to say yes. I think without necessarily being in the exact situation, there's something to be said for being empathetic and just being able to relate to people on a human level. That makes up the difference in a lot of instances sometimes. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
And I get it. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm thinking is, as someone who's not married and who's never been married, I can give marital advice. And because of my work as a minister, I can give some advice. But that's limited because I haven't experienced having been married before. You see what I'm saying? You can talk about a subject that you're knowledgeable about. Like, we could talk about the medical profession all day, but none of us are doctors. Would that make us any less wrong or any more right? No, we're just sharing what we know. But at the end of the day, if I wanted to talk to a married couple, I can only counsel them so far as my training allows me. I can't really relate on their level because I've never been married. If someone is, dare I say it, a rape victim, I could probably talk to them only so far. But as someone who's never been raped, I can't really relate to what they're going through. Now, if you've witnessed the murder, I can help you with that. But again, it would be like giving advice, but not really knowing, not having had the experience. Being knowledgeable, but not ever having the experience. You guys are in the IT, well, into IT more than I'm into IT. All right. I can tell you how to take apart a laptop and clean it and put it back together. But if your knowledge is, if you've built laptops and took them apart and you built them from scratch and you know how to program them and whatnot, you would have vastly more of a connection to the situation than I would. It just is what it is. I've almost drowned before. So I could probably talk to somebody about there's so many examples I could go through. But my point is, you can, but there's helping from a point of knowledge and there's helping from a point of experience. I don't really know how to explain that.
That's a pretty good explanation right there, actually.
So I guess I'll have to leave it at that. I mean, I could talk all day, but I guess if you've gone through it too, you could be more sympathetic to how someone feels. So, like, here's another example. As a Christian, I could talk to someone about failing as a Christian. But if I had never failed myself, it would be kind of, I would still try to be comforting, but I wouldn't really get it. But if if it hadn't been because I had failed before myself, then I wouldn't really be able to really feel what they feel, the disappointment, the depression, and the want to be perfect, and to not be able to understand why can't I be perfect. You know, I can understand and I could totally relate and I could be totally sympathetic. But if I was one of those people who had never failed before, then my help would be kind of shallow. So
I like what you said as far as the assisting from knowledge and assisting from experience. Those are two different things, but both are valuable. Both are very important. And you can't assume that just because you don't have experience that your knowledge is throwaway. And you can't assume that just because you have experience that it should be valued. Because you brought up the thought of the IT thing with me and Terrence. I'm pretty sure Terrence can tell you there's several people with high degrees in IT that can't take a computer apart or put it back together.
Amen to that.
And that's in their job description.
oh my goodness.
But anyway, to get off that subject, I think we had a pretty good discussion today. But before we go, anyone have anything they want to add? All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to throw it to Terrence for the close.
Well, this was definitely an interesting conversation, and I hope that our words meant something and touched someone listening. And as always, thank you all for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. God bless you. Good night. Deuce.
Peace out.
Peace.